Okay, this is since I think I need 2 hours. That's why I want to start it now itself. This is international relations, or and we'll see the expected outcome here. There is a small mistake on the topic, okay, because I have used the same previous one, national policy and Sri Lankan economy, but that's not the topic. It's the international affairs, okay. Previously, I didn't do this subject. Last year, I started this module because ISL want me to continue the this topic as well, because I have done national policy and the Sri Lankan economy. Here, mainly, we have to learn about this UN Charter, superpowers, neo-colonialism, third world. Actually, in here, mainly, we have to get to know about this international organizations and the international treaties, maybe not in detail, but why we need such. That's the main thing. And what kind of affiliations with these international organizations, and what kind of assistance they are giving during a crisis. So maybe now, let's say, now you can see now Ukraine war is there, then now very recently this earthquake in Turkey and Syria, then how the international countries support to these countries, all the things we have to learn in this international relations. Because if you do not have any international relationship with other countries, maybe you are like a isolated country. Now just think about the Afghanistan. Now no one is supporting them because they are like an isolated country. But if something happened in Turkey, so many international organizations, funding agencies, then the other countries, they are helping. But a Syrian case is somewhat different because they are somewhat isolated country. Now we will learn about these international relations, giving due consideration to the international organizations and the trade treaties, and maybe the nuclear development aspects, mainly why this kind of international relations are important, mainly to keep the peace in the world, not only a specific country. It's like a whole world. Now here we have to learn about the role of the UN, that means United Nations, and briefly learn about something on United Nations Charter, superpowers, neo-colonialism, third world. What do you mean by these things? Main international conflict zones and their effect to Sri Lanka and other countries, globalization, world trade, role of multinational companies, international patents, superstitions, protectionism by developed world, then GATT, WTO, then regional trade agreement in South Asian countries, then threats to survival of planet Earth and inhabitants, mainly related to the environmental aspects. Then disarmament and nuclear non-proliferation. Now that's a very important thing we have to learn. Now, here we learn about the peaceful utilization of nuclear science. Then judicial use of limited resources. That's also you have to learn. Now here actually this concept, we are not going into the very much detail. Just go through the surface of these things to give the main importance about these concepts. Then social harmony, peace initiatives, war and terrorism, major constraints in resolution, hegemony by the developed countries, human rights, hegemonic applications by developed world. Okay, now here first one is the United Nations. What do you mean by United Nations? The term UN was thought up by Franklin D. Roosevelt. Now this was initiated after World War II. Now, I think during the World War II, they mainly initiated first using declaration by United Nations on 1st January 1942, when representatives of 26 nations pledged their governments to continue fighting against the Axis powers. That means initially in 1942, during that time, USA and Soviet Russia all are in one side because they had a war against the Germans. Then Roosevelt, that means he's from the USA. Then the Winston Churchill, he's from UK. Then we know that means the Soviet Russia, USSR, then China signed a short document came to known as the United Nations Declaration. Then with these 4 countries, that means USA, UK, Soviet Russia, China, and other 22 countries added their signatures. That means altogether, originally, 26 countries, they signed a declaration to pledge the support to fight against the actually the Germans. Okay, now you can see what are the countries here. I am not going into the details. Now this is in 1942, but after that, after the World War II, I think you can remember 1945, World War II was finished. Then they had one conference in San Francisco. That's the very important conference when you consider about the formation of the UN. Then representatives of 50 states, now previously it was 26, but after that there are more countries, 50 states met to draw up the UN Charter based on the proposals by the great powers. That means during that time also, they identified great powers from China, Soviet Union, UK, and the US during that time. Later, France also considered as the great powers. Then the charter unanimously approved and signed by all the participating states, original members of the UN. Now then, once they formed that charter, they considered as these 50 states were considered as the original members. Then they prepared the constitution instrument of the organization. That means they prepared the constitution. Then rights and obligations of member states, UN organizations and procedures, because there are so many UN organizations. We'll learn about other that also. Under UN, there are so many sub-UN agencies. Why they formed this UN or United Nations? To maintain the international peace and security. Now, once the Second World War was finished, they thought their intention was not to have any other war like that. Okay, maybe now you can think why this Ukraine-Russia war, but still you can't consider it as a Third World War. But their main objective of the UN main objective was not to have a war like Second World War in the world, to develop friendly relations among nations based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples. Now, that's also a very important thing. And now they identify what are the root causes why these countries having wars against another countries. And they thought they should develop friendly relations among nations, or maybe some conflict arise, UN will involve and try to settle these kind of disputes, to help nations work together to improve the lives of poor people, to conquer hunger, disease, and illiteracy, and to encourage respect of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Now you can see why they formed the UN. That means now to implement these activities, they form different UN agencies as well, to be center for harmonizing the actions of nations in attaining these common ends. Then what are the principles UN is adopting? It is based on the sovereign equality of all members. Now, once a country get a UN membership, they consider it's a sovereign nation. Now, in the world, I think almost nearly 200 countries now in the United Nations. That means everyone has to respect that and accept that they are sovereign members. All members are to fulfill in good faith towards charter obligations. Charter obligations means the UN charter obligations. That means these things. Now, they are having the constitution, then they have identified the rights and obligations and what are the procedures, UN organizations and procedures, and the why they form the UN. Those are the things they have to accept. They are to settle their international disputes by peaceful means and without endangering international peace, security, and justice. Now you can rethink whether this Ukraine-Russia war, whether they are accepted these UN principles or not. Okay. Then members are to refrain from the threat for use of force against any other state. They are to give the UN every assistance in action it takes in accordance with the Charter. Nothing in the Charter is to authorize the UN to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state. That's also very much clear. They think in a country, if there is a dispute between two countries or among countries, UN can interfere, but if there is a dispute within the country, they are not intervening for that kind of matter. That's an internal conflicts. Mainly they will involve with the external conflicts. Then membership open to all peace-loving nations which accept the obligations of the Charter. The General Assembly admits new member states on the recommendation of the Security Council. The Charter provides for suspension or expulsion of a member for violation of the principles of the Charter. No such action has ever been taken. That means no one has expelled from the membership. Then structure of the organization. I think now you may have heard these things. Mainly first in top is the General Assembly. I think that's the place where the UN Secretary General is there. That's the General Assembly. Then other main institution is the Security Council. Then there is another part, the Economic and Social Council, the Trustee Council, the International Court of Justice, the Secretariat, UN Secretariat is there. Here I am not going into the details. Here no need to memorize all the things. Just think about the structure of the UN. General Assembly, the representatives of all member states, each of which has one vote. Now almost 193 members are there. Maybe I can't remember the exact value. Maybe I prepared these slides last November, I think. Maybe still 193. Then decisions on important issues, example, peace, security, admission of new members, budgetary matters require two-thirds majority. Now, there is a constitution. Some decisions they can adopt with a simple majority, but some decisions they need the two-thirds majority. Now, like there are some countries, UN engage the UN peacekeeping forces. For that kind of things, you need two-thirds majority. Now, that means, example, peace and security. Now, let's say if the UN wants to intervene to some countries, to several countries' conflicts, or maybe the two-country conflict between two countries, then they have to first get the confirmation from in the General Assembly. That means they need the two-thirds majority. Then other main important thing is the UN Security Council. That's also very important thing. What is the main objective of the UN Security Council? Is to maintain the international peace of security. Now, in UN Security Council, there are 15 members. Out of 15 members, there are 5 superpower members. They are permanent members. Now, previously, I told there are 4 members. They mentioned as the great powers: China, Russia, UK, and US. But later, France also included as the permanent members. They are having the veto power. That means it's the supreme power. If one country object or for the proposal. Now, let's say if they have two-thirds majority, maybe some cases they are having two-thirds majority, but if one of the permanent country vote against on that particular vote, then whatever they get received for two-thirds majority is invalid. That's why they call them as the superpowers or the great powers, and they are having the power of veto. That means they, with their vote against on some action, a complete decision null and void, because they were the main members who initiated the UN. Decisions on procedure and substantive matters require 9 votes. Permanent members, power of veto. All members of the UN are obliged to accept the decisions of the Security Council. Then Economic and Social Council also there. Coordinates the economic, social, and related work of the UN and the specialized agencies and institutions. Normally, there are 54 members are there who serve for 3-year terms. Then, other main important thing they are having is the International Court of Justice. The principal judicial organization of the UN. Now, normally that's the place they mention. Now in our country also, they are telling, okay, we will go to the International Court of Justice. That kind of thing they can go. Settle legal disputes between the states. Gives advisory opinions to the UN. Actually, this International Court of Justice, they say they serve for the disputes between states, not the disputes within the country. Okay, but maybe now the system may somewhat change, but mainly now you can see at this Serbian war, they had an international court and they made the, I think, previous Serbian president, and they punish at the kind of things. Gives advisory opinions to the UN. All member states, not open to private persons and entities or international organizations. International conventions establishing rules recognized by the contesting states international custom as evidence of general practice as accepted as law. The general principles of law recognized by nations, the various nations. Now, here it comprises with the persons representing everywhere in the world. That means most majority of are from different member states. Then membership of International Court of Justice. Security Council voting independently, chosen on the basis of their qualification. Care is taken that principal legal system of the world are represented. No two judges can be from the same country. That means mainly 15 judges they are selecting from 15 countries and serve 9-year term and maybe re-elected. It depends on their capabilities or the acceptance by their decisions accepted by the other country. They cannot engage in any other occupation during their term of office. These are the main things. And UN Secretariat is the other main place. And the UN Secretariat, you can see the Secretary General, appointed by the General Assembly on the recommendation of the Security Council for 5-year renewable term. That means that 5-year can be extended for another term, or maybe other countries can nominate another person. Now, actually, UN Secretary General, he is the most important person in the country, in the world. That means for that post, there are huge competition among other countries. Administering peacekeeping operations. Now, he is the person who is responsible to administer the whole UN functions. Then mediating international disputes, surveying economic and social trends, preparing studies on human rights and sustainable development, informs the world media about the work of UN, organizes international conferences, translate documents in the official languages. Then they are having more than 7,500 staff members, 170 countries, and they are having headquarters in New York, but other sub activities in other centers as well. That means Geneva, they are mainly having the disarmament, human rights. That's why I think every March and October, they are having the human rights meetings in Geneva. That's, I think everyone in Sri Lanka may heard about this one. They are going for a human rights cases in Geneva. Now they have had a case against the Sri Lanka also. That's why government represent the Geneva, not in New York or other countries. New York, they are having the headquarters. Then in Vienna, they are having the crime prevention, international trade law, peaceful users of outer space, and International Atomic Energy Agency, also located in the Vienna UN headquarters, within the Vienna headquarters. Then Nairobi, they are having the environment, human settlements division. Then UN Secretary General, symbol of UN, idols and spokesman for the interest of the world people, is the chief administrative officer of the UN. Brings to the attention of the Security Council any matter which may threaten the maintenance of international peace and Security Council. Consultations with world leaders, government officials, representatives of civil society groups, the private sector and others. Annual report on the work of the organization. That means UN Secretary has a multiple roles to keep the world peace, as well as if there is any disaster, natural disaster, or maybe a man-made disaster. If the country wants any help, UN is sending all these human needs, human basic needs to the affected people under the guidance of Secretary General and through their different agencies. We'll learn about what kind of different agencies, and whatever the agencies now, if you know, the whole majority of these agencies are under UN. The UN family, now here we can see UN, United Nations Secretariat is there. Then UN programs like UNICEF, then specialized agencies, UNESCO, World Health Organization, then related organization, example, World Trade Organization, World Bank, International Monetary Fund. Now I think every organizations, they are in Sri Lanka, except World Trade Organization. All the others, they are working closely with the Sri Lanka. Now, World Trade Organization is there, but mostly Sri Lanka do not have that kind of impact on the World Trade Organization. But UNICEF, actually, we are getting support from these UN programs. Now, UNICEF, they are supporting so many things for the child education everywhere. They involved, and UNESCO, they involved mainly to protect the heritage sites and other things. Then World Health Organization. Now you heard during the COVID what kind of role they play, not only the COVID, whatever the disaster, human health related disaster, they are actively involved. Then World Trade Organization, then the World Bank, International Monetary Fund. Now everyone is talking about the IMF. That's also under UN family. Now we will learn about the World Bank and International Monetary Fund because these are somewhat related to our country as well. Now, why this concept of World Bank arose? Now everyone is thinking, where is the World Bank? Why this kind of, well, now we know, okay, maybe in Sri Lanka, we do not have a Bank of Sri Lanka. Okay, that means it's like Central Bank of Sri Lanka. They are the governing body. Same, likewise, for the world, they are having the World Bank. Why they form the World Bank? They initiate the World Bank mainly to rebuild the Europe after World War II. Now I told this UN, they initiated after the World War II. Then during the World War II, Europe was badly damaged and they need funds to rebuild the Europe. Then mission has expanded to 8 poor countries in effects at poverty elimination. Now once they rebuild the Europe, they thought, okay, they can continue this concept as World Bank, and they expanded to give aid to the poor countries, mainly poverty elimination, infrastructure development, building good governance capabilities, that means corruption, financial system. Now in Sri Lanka also, World Bank, most of the World Bank programs, they are related with the rural villages. Why? Because they want to enhance the living standards of the poor people. Their main objectives were to enhance the living standards of poor people through poverty elimination. Then infrastructure development also they supported, mainly not the commercial infrastructure. They are trying to give the funds to develop infrastructure which would give indirectly to eliminate the poverty of the people, maybe the living to enhance the living standards of people, maybe very rural areas, to construct the bridges, or maybe construct the road, maybe construct the school, maybe in other poor countries to construct the some food processing, agricultural development, that kind of infrastructure, and also building good governance capabilities, how to eliminate the corruption, maybe to develop the systems, and they think mainly introduce the systems in, let's say now in Sri Lanka also, they are trying to introduce systems, maybe this tax collection, maybe the other facility systems to prevent the undue corruption. Then other main thing is the International Monetary Fund. Give me 1 minute. In IMF is the lender of last resort. I think that that's the IMF. It's like a theme, lender of the last resort. Now I think you can see why Sri Lanka chose IMF, because it's the last resort. Maintain stable exchange rates. That's the other main thing. Now, once we accept to go with the IMF, their first condition is to maintain our exchange rates. Okay, maybe maintain means they request to float the exchange rates, because they want the exchange rates to be determined through the market forces, not by through the government, through the keeping it as a fixed interest, fixed exchange rates. Then prevent balance of payment crisis. Okay, I think I explained to you what you mean by the balance of payment. That means how they give the balance of payment crisis. So how they solve the balance of payments. They will give stringent conditions to limit the imports, because they want to control the trade account, then the capital account, then the finance accounts. All the places, their main objective is to limit the balance of payment crisis. Now Sri Lanka having a huge balance of payment deficit, then they are trying to restrict the places where balance of payments get negative. Mainly imports are higher than the exports. Then their main concern is to limit the imports. Then government expenditure. Then government expenditure they are trying to limit. Then they want to enhance the reserves. Okay, maybe they want to enhance the reserves by giving some reasonable loan facilities and other things. But when they want to give the loans to the countries, they will impose very stringent conditions, because they know that if they give with the linear conditions, this problem may not solve. They may use that money, and maybe in a very shorter period, again, they will in a crisis. Now, same thing happened to the Sri Lanka. Now, I think if you go through these news and other articles, you can see, I think this is the 16th times Sri Lanka is getting the support from IMF. Whatever the things, maybe initially government has accepted their conditions, but later due to our culture or maybe our disciplines, we have not able to retain our stable economic growth. Then conditionality and structural adjustments. Now you can see what kind of things they are proposing. Now they are telling, okay, restructure the loss-making state-owned enterprises. Their main condition is give the survival of the state-owned enterprises by their own, not by giving any subsidies or anything. Now, if you learn, if you can read these four main things, you can see what kind of organization is IMF, and when you compare the present IMF conditions, you can see they are having a consistent objective. Now, why we are going to the IMF? That means lender of last resort, because now Sri Lanka previously utilized or may use so many other options. Maybe they have gone to government loans, maybe the other financial institution, maybe Exim banks in other countries, maybe private banks in other countries, but our country could not manage to resolve our issues because we do not have a proper control on balance of payment issues. Our maybe people's lifestyle, or maybe government has shown to the people that we are not in a crisis situation or whatever the thing. Our country economy, any government, they didn't manage in a proper way. That means actually our country, we might not have this kind of luxury for the people, but people thought we can lavishly we can spend the money, and we think we are having so much money to buy the imported products and other things. But maybe now, after 75 years of independence, we came across all the issues. Okay, maybe we can't say only one previous government had all the things, but it's up to a cumulative or accumulated crisis. Then, now they are telling, okay, maintain the stable exchange rates. Then they are telling prevent balance of payment crisis. Then conditionality and structural adjustments. Those are the things now they are imposed as the main IMF conditions. Okay, with that, we will go to the other parts as well. Now we learn here these some things related to the World Trade Agreements. Maybe some are under, now WTO is under UN, maybe other things are not under UN, but these are World Trade Agreements. Now here GATT is the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. I think maybe previously it was known as the GATT, was formed but in the year 1947. Now you can see all these institutions and organizations, they form these institutions and organizations after the World War II. Now, why? Every country, they try to develop their countries by their own, because they had so many natural resources. Maybe they want to sell these natural resources to the other countries. Then they want some international agreements. It's like international trades. They want to carry out the international trades. Now, when they want to carry out the international trades, then they thought, okay, it's better to have some agreement. They formed was the GATT, that we called as the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. They intended to keep trade open and tariff-based barriers low. Now, most of the countries, they are having some trade barriers. Now, let's say if Sri Lanka Now we had that kind of issue. Now, when we opened our economy in 1977, every product, whether we can manufacture or not, they imported from other countries. Then automatically our local entrepreneurship or our local manufacturing capacities or the capabilities, those were diminished, and we were dependent on the foreign products. That means when we depend on the foreign finished goods, we need a lot of foreign exchange to import that kind of product. Then arose out of the failure to establish an international trade organization, institutionalized series of trade negotiations, eventually organized as the World Trade Organization. Now, this was formed as an independent entity, but later they changed this GATT into the World Trade Organization. Then it came under UN umbrella. The main purpose of the implementation of GATT was to increase cross-country trade in the world so as to reinforce economic soundness after the Second World War. It is the foundation of World Trade Organization that made open trade between nations, but also maintain some barriers for the benefit of all. Now, once it formed it as the World Trade Organization, that was open to the every member in the UN. Anyway, that countries can have their own barriers. Otherwise, individual countries may have an impact on their local production and other things. That's also accepted thing. But most of the now in European Union, they are having a free trade agreement. But when we try to sell some products to the European nations, there are some barriers to the Asian countries, because some barriers they may request first they have to give the priority to the European countries. Likewise, they are having some barriers, or maybe they are having some stringent quality. Maybe they have to follow some European standards. Those are the things they mention. Then here you can just compare the GATT and WTO, meaning GATT can be described as a set of rules, multilateral trade agreement that came into force to encourage the international trade and remove cross-country trade barriers. That was the main objectives of formation of GATT. WTO is an international organization that came into existence to oversee the liberalized trade between countries. Now here, main difference is GATT is a general agreement. That's not the institute. But here, there is an institute. Now here, main issue was there is no control body for to monitor or regulate this general agreement on tariffs and trade. Now it's like a document, it's like a concept. But to overcome that issue, they formed the, now here WTO is an international organization that came into existence to oversee and liberalize trade between countries. Now in here there is an organization, and that organization facilitate the same functions, facilitate through this agreement. Institution, it does not have institutional existence, but have a small secretariat. It has permanent institution along with the secretariat. Now here participant nations, here WTO members. And I am not going into the details, everything. This is just the difference. Now, initially we had the GATT, it's an agreement. Then after that, due to the expansion of the international trades, and there are so many new conventions and other things to facilitate that one, they thought, okay, we should have a separate organization to facilitate this trade among the countries. Okay, or maybe between countries or among the countries. Then we'll go, now here I am going to cover the topics. Here, nothing we have to learn in details. That's why I am telling. Now, maybe you can go through and search the internet for each and individual content and find out this meaning of these words. There is no issue here. I am trying to give you some awareness on these particular topics. Here, I am also not the expert on everything. Yeah, I also tried, because ISL wants me to give some brief explanation on these topics. I am trying to give you a support in here. Okay. Now, what do you mean by globalization? And what do you mean by the protectionism? Those are the words in the still exist in the world. Globalization is the word used to describe the growing interdependence of the world's economies, cultures, and populations brought about by cross-border trade in goods and services, technology, and flows of investment, people, and information. Now, under the globalization, we think world is as one country. Okay, that's the theoretical concept they want to develop. But okay, maybe there are restrictions and barriers from individual countries, but main objective is to limit these barriers. Then protectionism, policy of protecting domestic industries against foreign competition by means of tariffs, subsidies, import quotas, or other restrictions of handicap placed on the imports of foreign competitors. Now, in Sri Lanka, when we opened our economy in 1977, we opened as much as possible, but other countries, when they try to open their economies, they had some protectionism concerns. That means they are having some higher tariff for the import goods, or maybe subsidies for the local production, or they are limiting the import quotas. Now it's like a fuel quota. Now, in our country, we are adopting. Now, whatever the vehicle, okay, maybe we may get 20 liters. Okay, maybe there are different ways to get, that's a different story. But I am telling as a basic principle, now everyone is getting 20 liters for a week. Now it's like a quota system. Same way, import quotas were implemented. Now, with that, these import companies, they may not be able to bring unnecessary quantities to the countries, or other restrictions or handicaps placed on imports of foreign competitors. Because why we use these protectionism concepts? Mainly to safeguard the local industries. History shows that protectionism threatens developing countries and the global economy, inciting the trade war and decreasing global trade. Now, when you adopt the protectionism, that will decrease the global trade. Let's say if we open the world economy, it's like a free movement. But when you adopt some protectionism rule, that free movement having some restrictions. Now, still that the social, now in the world, you can see there are countries who are having the socialism. These socialized countries, still they think they can develop their product by themselves, and they are having restrictions to import the countries from other countries. Then we can go for the further. Globalization and protectionism. Several wealthy nations, including US, implemented non-tariff barriers to trade. These included tighter restrictions on textiles and clothing and subsidizing agricultural exports. Now, whatever the thing we are calling US is a full democratic country and other things, still they also use their protectionism rights. Maybe now in Sri Lanka, we may not be able to get 100% textile exports to the USA because they are having some quota system for their market. And maybe the agricultural exports, they are having stringent quality controls, or maybe they are telling they need this specific chemicals, this specific fertilizer should be used. Maybe that will indirectly say, no, every country, let's say poor countries, or maybe the underdeveloped countries may not enter into the US market. Such actions decrease the ability of developing countries to export goods, especially agricultural products. As a result, many countries had limited ability to import the resources they needed. Trade is especially important to the needs of developing countries, so any restrictions could have devastating effects. Now, let's say you can just think about the Sri Lanka, whether can we survive without international trade? That means we need to export our products. That means to earn the dollars. Can we survive without imports? No, that means we have to import our essential items as well. Okay. The way protectionism threatens developing countries goes beyond the implicated sectors. It really affects use of resources and distribution of resources. Now, let's say when we have the protectionism barriers, maybe now, let's say when you compare the Sri Lanka and India trade agreements, now their cost of production is very low because they are doing the mass scale production. Then if we open our economy and if we let whatever the product to come, then automatically their products may be cheaper, and the products we develop within our country may be high, cost will be high. Then normally now people will go to the market and buy the products, they will buy the cheaper product. That will automatically destroy the local industry. In addition, protectionism limits foreign investment, which decreases growth opportunities. Now, that's also there. Now, when a country invests on other country, that is we call the foreign direct investments, maybe they will have restrictions. They can say, okay, for this particular country, we will invest only, let's say, 250 million US dollars. But there are opportunities to invest more, but they may not invest like that. That kind of barriers they are having. Then now we learn about the overall agreements. Now this SAFTA and actually not SATA, it should be SAFTA, SAFTA. Okay. The South Asian Preferential Trading Arrangement, that is we call the SAFTA, reflected the desire of the member states to promote and sustain mutual trade and economic cooperation within SAARC region through the exchange of tariff concession. Now, it is the South Asian Preferential Trading Arrangement. Now, here the trading arrangement, and SAFTA is the free trade area. South Asian Free Trade Area came into force since January 2006, replacing SAFTA, which was operative among SAARC countries in December 1995, because they thought, now here SAFTA, that also not implemented properly because this India and Pakistan, they are like a historical rivalry. Because of this rivalry, they could not reach to a mutual agreement, and because of that particular agreement failed. Then they thought, we will go for a South Asian free trade area. Now, India and other countries having the agreements, but not with every country. Among its aims are promoting and enhancing mutual trade and economic cooperation by eliminating barriers in trade, promoting conditions for fair competition in the free trade area, ensuring equitable benefits to all, establishing a framework for further regional cooperation to expand the mutual benefits of the agreement. It could lead to enhancement of foreign investment among South nations, but most of the countries except India, they will have a major impact due to the SAFTA if they allow full imports or the exports as in this agreement, because now in Sri Lanka, if we open our economy, all these Indian products, they will come into the market, but we may not be able to export our products to India. They won't buy. Definitely there will be trade deficit. That means India will have a positive trade balance when they do the business with Sri Lanka, but Sri Lanka will may not get any gain because our products may not able to compete in the Indian market. But that does not mean every product there will be a market, but when you compare with the amounts, yearly amounts, likewise, our imports will be higher than the exports. Then other main thing is the superpowers and neo-colonialism, third world. What do you mean by the superpowers? World superpowers, also called global superpowers, are the world's most powerful nations. Now I told there are 5 countries, initially 4, but later France also joined. And these countries we called as the superpower countries. Superpowers assume dominant positions on the world stage and are characterized by their ability to exert influence on project power or the global scale. Now here, it does not only related to the security for consideration. That means not only the security power or any other thing. It's like superpower means the impact they can do for the international trade, maybe the international global security, peace, everywhere. Okay, maybe the environment, or all the things, all the considerations you have to think as a superpower. The economic, military, foreign policies of superpowers are watched closely by other countries and can greatly impact the rest of the world. Now, here, now let's say if American president is addressing the parliament as a first speech, maybe all the medias in the world, they will telecast that his speech in live. Why? Because every country, they wants to listen to the American president, what kind of economic actions, or maybe whether he wants to impose any trade protectionism barriers, or maybe he wants to open the economy, maybe whatever the things he's telling will give an impact to the US dollar rate. But let's say if our president wants to address the parliament, maybe our own MPs may not be there because they think it is not important. But maybe the USA president wants addressing everywhere in the world. It's like a live telecast. Why? Because they think US decisions may impact on the whole world. Okay. Now, when we think the UK Parliament, it may not have that kind of impact. Now, still, now let's say about now Ukraine, Russia war. If Russian president wants to give a speech, everyone will listen, whether they will stop the war or maybe they will carry out the war further. But that kind of decision will have an impact to the world. Then Britannica insightfully defines a superpower as a state that cannot be ignored on the world stage and without whose cooperation no world problem can be solved. Okay, that may be a one definition. Maybe that's why USA every time they involve in every decision-making stages in world conflicts. The term global superpowers first appeared after World War II and was applied to the United States and Soviet Union. Now, I think initially there were two world superpowers, one side United States and other side Soviet Union. Then the US and USSR dominated world affairs during the Cold War. Cold War means post-war-session. And neither made a move without considering the reaction of the other. Now, during that time, I think before 1990s, I think during 1990s, the Russian Federation is fallen, and then it's not a Russian Federation. Individual countries were formed. Then neo-colonialism, that's also a word in the word, is the control of less developed countries by developed countries through indirect means. Okay. Now, here someone can say, okay, that's why people are saying Sri Lanka also a colony of the China. Okay, because I am not saying that's true, but now to give some impression about this word, it's like that. Okay, maybe someone can say Sri Lanka is India. Sri Lanka now have to act as the Chinese colony, or maybe Sri Lanka has to act as an Indian colony. Okay, why? Because they are having indirect control. Now, let's say now this IMF loan facilities, everything, why is dragging? China is, according to the IMF, they are telling China is not giving proper loan restructuring method. Okay, that means now that whatever the decision taken by the Chinese government, that will have a direct impact on the release of the loan from the IMF. That means they indirectly control the country. This mainly happened after the World War II. There are bigger countries, they capture the other countries and they didn't give the full independence. They now most of the African countries, they had this situation. And in first use after World War II to refer to the continuing dependence of former colonies on foreign countries, but its meaning soon broadened to apply more generally to places where the power of developed countries was used to produce a colonial-like exploitation, mainly the African states by the European countries. Now, when you go and search about the African countries, they have given the independence, but it's not a full independence. Most of the natural resources belongs to the African countries. These European countries, they have taken to their country wealth, and African countries, they didn't have their rights of their own natural resources. Most indirectly, these European companies, they are taking all the benefits. Those are the way they use this neo-colonization. Now, other thing is the third world. What do you mean by the third world? Actually, we think third world is the poor countries. That does not mean the poor countries. Third world is not the poor countries. In the after the World War II, which we call the Cold War, there are two groups. One is under USA, other countries following the Russian Federation, and they are having the USA countries, they followed the NATO, that means North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and Soviet Russia, those countries, they had a Warsaw Pact. Now here, the United States, Canada, Japan, South Korea, Western European nations, they and their allies represent the first world. That means NATO, then Soviet Union, China, Cuba, North Korea, Vietnam, and their allies represent the second world. And all the other non-aligned countries, they referred it as the third world. That's not related with the poor countries, that's the third world. But now, once that after the 1990s, once the Russian Federation collapsed, now you can't see any second world or third world. Okay, maybe China is there, but you can't see China as the second world, because China also supported previously Soviet Union. Okay, maybe now in later. Now this is mainly allied to the NATO and Warsaw Pacts. Okay, NATO means North Atlantic Treaty Organization, mainly related with the, now I think if you go through this Ukraine and Russia war, why this Russia attacked the Ukraine? Ukraine wants to be a member of the NATO. That means once, if they accept the Ukraine as the NATO member, Ukraine was previously a country, belongs to a Russian Federation, and Russia thought, okay, in adjacent to their country, it's like a neighboring country to the Russia, and now they will go and get the membership of the NATO. That will have a future threat to the Russian Federation, Soviet Russia. Okay, that's why that's the initiation of this Ukraine and Russia war. Okay, maybe there are so many other things, but they do not want NATO countries to be their close neighbors, but also Ukraine was previously attached to the Soviet Russia. This terminology provided the way of broadly categorizing the nations of the earth into three groups based on the political divisions. Strictly speaking, Third World was a political rather than an economic group. And that's the thing I just want to emphasize. Maybe now when we learn in our school days, we also say Sri Lanka is a third world country. Maybe we when we write our essays and everywhere, we are writing Sri Lanka belongs to a third world country, and we, in our minds, we thought because of we are a poor nation, we are saying third world, but that's not the concept of the third world. Okay. Since the fall of Soviet Union and the end of the Cold War, the term third world has decreased in use. It is being replaced with terms such as developing countries, least developed countries, or the global south. Now, in the world, there are other names like a developing countries and least developed countries, rather than the first world, second world, third world. The concept, it has become outdated as it no longer represents the current political or economic state of the world, and historically poor countries have transited different income stages. But now there are new superpowers, maybe the America and China. Now they are having maybe some trade barriers and other things. Now, same like American president addressing the parliament or the nation. Now, all over the world media, they are giving due consideration when Chinese president addressing their parliament, or maybe when he visited to another country, everyone wants what kind of agreements they are signing, what kind of trade treaties they are signing. Those are the things. Now, like a World Trade Organization, they also form different trade organization to support the Chinese trade. And also they are giving, like a World Bank, IMF, they are also having different financial institutions, maybe China Exim Bank or whatever the things, they are providing loans to the countries without going through the United Nations processes. Then this is also a very important thing, main conflict zones and their effects to Sri Lanka and globally. Now, you have to understand what are the main international conflict zones. That these conflicts are mainly due to ethnic, religious, ideological, territorial, government, and economic. Now, when you see these main conflicts, you can identify some are ethnic. Most of the African countries, they are having the ethnic crises. Maybe some countries, they are having religious issues. Then some countries, they are having the ideological issues, maybe the territorial. Now, India, Pakistan, every time they are having the territorial issues. Maybe the government issues and the economic boundaries. Now, China, USA having the economic conflicts. Okay. Now here Ukraine, the war in the Ukraine is the latest conflict to erupt. It has caused over a million refugees to flee the country. Now here what I just want to give you the main conflict zone. One is in Ukraine. Other one in Afghanistan. Okay, maybe you can say Afghanistan war is now finished, but that not, you can't say it's like that. It will be a continuous issue. Still, Afghanistan people, they may not be able to travel as they wish, and there are so many restrictions. They can't, most of the Western countries, they have freezed their foreign deposits, and also they have put so many bans to foreign travels. Maybe they are not giving basic needs to import to Afghanistan. Then other is the Ethiopia. It's a huge conflict in the Ethiopia. Maybe it's an internal power struggle, but it's dragged for so long. Then South Sudan, then Syria. I think in Syria, it's more than now almost 15 years. A country, it's ongoing war. Now that's the reason I told. Now during this recent earthquake, everyone is showing the pictures of the Turkey and how these rescue people go and giving basic needs to facilitate the affected people. But in Syrian case, they also had a severe damage, but most of the media, they may not be able to access these locations due to the Syrian conflict. And most of the roads, they have limited access, and the people also do not have sufficient basic needs. And other countries also, due to the Syria's government issues and maybe the very restricted international relationships, majority of the countries, they are not able to support. Then other main countries, the Yemen. Now Yemen also having their internal fights now almost more than 10 years. So many people. Now previously Yemen was not a very poor country, but now it has become a poorest countries in the Arab world. Why? Mainly there are all resources they have to spend on these fighting, and there are so many people they died during the war. Then what would be the impact to the Sri Lanka and other country over this invasion of Ukraine? Now, why we want to learn the importance of this conflict. Now, what would be the impact of this invasion? It is better if you can read something and learn more, and I will give some basic things. The Russian invasion of Ukraine deepens the existing global economic crisis into worse. Persistent supply chain bottlenecks and associated rising inflation clouding the prospects of smooth global economic recovery from the pandemic. That's the main thing. Now, as soon as the COVID pandemic decreases, this Russian-Ukraine war started. Now, every country wants, they were in, most of the countries in the world, they are in the recovery path and they need so much support through the international trades to recover from the COVID pandemic. And now Sri Lanka also in that case, we have import so many things from Russia and the Ukraine. And just think about how many tourists arrived from the Ukraine and how many tourists arrived from the Russia. Okay, still Russia, there are tourists arrive, but I'm telling so many Ukraine tourists, they travel all over the country because Ukraine is a very people, they are spending lavishly because they are having so many natural resources. The West, led by the US and EU, swiftly imposed strict economic sanctions targeting Russian banks. Now, Russia is the main exporter for the natural gas to the Europe and also the other refined fuels. When they impose bans, automatically Russian economy will collapse. Now, once the Russian economy is collapsing, they may also have some barriers. They may not be able to import their products from every country. And maybe now Sri Lanka also, now when they introduce the trade barriers, these US and EU, when they impose the trade barriers, our Sri Lankan tea, Russia was the main country. They imported Sri Lankan tea, and our main export, our tea export, when you consider the tea export to Russia, Russia was the major country we exported tea. But okay, maybe once we export the tea to Russia, there are huge restrictions on the payment terms and other things. Okay, then such move will inevitably make payments for Russia exports and imports hard. The ongoing military conflict in Europe could not have come at a worse time of Sri Lanka given its own prevailing high inflation. Now, the other main thing is, now most of the flour we are bringing from the wheat, we are bringing from the Ukraine or the Russia, and all these fertilizers. That's also import from the Ukraine and Russian Federation. Now you can see the oil prices, they were around in 2014, it's around US dollars 105, and it's also a huge price increase to the crude oil. Okay, maybe now it has been reduced, but during winter period, all these prices were skyrocketed. Then Ukraine, the Russian Federation and Ukraine, known as the major cereal, fertilizer, critical mineral, and iron and steel exports. Now, and all these asbestos we are bringing from Russia. and cereal products. That means malt, now this net the malt and Horlicks, all the things we need the malt. Major, those kind of things. Ukraine is the major country. They produce these grains. And other, now everyone has, most of the scientists, these mainly the agricultural scientists, they have forecasted if this war continues for so long period, definitely there will be a huge starvation issue in African countries, because most of the Ukraine grains, they exported to the African countries. If they are unable to export to African countries basic food item, maybe they are eating mainly the flour related items, they may not be able to produce sufficient flour to give basic foods to the African nations people. Now, and okay, maybe now USA and other European countries, maybe they will have their own stocks, but Ukraine and Russia, they were the main exporters on these cereals. Western countries will be keen to minimize the spillover effects of sanctions on their economies. Like Germany, the major European economies heavily depend on Russian energy, making it necessary to exempt the energy sector from sanctions. Now, whatever the European Union wants to put a ban on Russian imports, that means Russian exports, they may not be able to put bans on the energy. Otherwise, all these European countries, they will have to face a very much shortage with respect to the energy. The possible economic fallout will reduce Russian demand for foreign products, and if Russia cuts off natural gas to the European market, likely to outcome will be a recession. Then other main thing is, now overall Russia and Ukraine account for 2% of Sri Lanka's imports and 2.2% exports in 2020. That means around 2% of Sri Lanka imports products from the Russia and Ukraine. However, both countries are vital, important sources for wheat and export destination for Sri Lanka's black tea. Okay, that's the most important thing. Now, why? Okay, maybe our currency issues also there. Otherwise, now mainly this wheat flour prices, it's like a global price increase, mainly due to the exports from the Ukraine. Now they are unable to produce and export. Then similarly, 45% of Sri Lanka's wheat imports are sourced from Russia and Ukraine. In addition, more than half of Sri Lanka imported soybeans, sunflower oil, seeds, peas are from Ukraine. Moreover, Russia and Ukraine are significant import sources for asbestos, semi-finished products of iron and steel, copper, and potassium chloride for fertilizer. Now, this previously all urea and potassium-based fertilizer for the paddy cultivation and other agricultural crops, Sri Lanka imported from the Russian and Ukraine. But now we may not be able to get those fertilizer from these countries. Okay, maybe someone can ask why from Russia, due to the sanctions imposed to the banks. Now, Sri Lanka may not open the letter of credit to buy products from the Russia. That's why they are telling if Sri Lanka give money directly to the Russia, that may be possible, but to give that one, Sri Lanka need the Russian ruble. Those are not available. Then inflationary pressure in the Western markets. Now, when they have higher inflations in their countries, they may lower their demands. Maybe then purchasing power of the people in the European countries, that will reduce, and maybe they may not buy the products as previously. Mainly Sri Lankan ready-made garments, tea, spices, and seafood. We will have the impact now. Let's in our country, when we lose our purchasing power, automatically we won't purchase as previously. Same way, now in European countries, they have to spend more money on energy than buying their essential goods. Then Sri Lanka should focus on safeguarding access to vital raw materials and food commodities. Can Sri Lanka can do like this kind of things? Can we afford to keep sufficient stocks in our country? Because we do not have sufficient foreign currency. But in other countries now, maybe the America or maybe the European countries, they have sufficient foreign exchange to keep sufficient stocks. But in our countries, not only Sri Lanka, these least developed countries, we may not be able to have sufficient food, sufficient stocks that will impact on the food security conditions in Sri Lanka. Now, in our country, not only the Russian war, okay, this organic fertilizer issue also causes the huge impact, but indirectly, we may not be able to. Now, how that will happen? Now, the importation of wheat flour having an impact due to the Russia-Ukraine war, and the price of the wheat flour kilo has been increased. Now, because of that, bread price was increased. Then people slowly move into consume more rice. But in our country, rice also now not as a cheap product, or maybe the kilo of the rice is comparatively to the maybe 2 to 3 years back, prices are very high. Now, previously poor people, they tried to eat at least 1 meal rice or maybe 2 meals bread, but now bread prices also increase. That's the way it's impact on the food security of the people. Okay, then we'll go and see what kind of threats to the planet Earth. Here I am trying to cover the specific points requested by the ISL to cover under this topic. The world has identified 5 key drivers of biodiversity loss as changes in land and sea use. I think you can understand this part. Direct exploitation of natural resources, climate change, pollution, invasion of alien species. These are the main 5 threats identified to the planet Earth. Okay. Now, under these 5 key points, you can identify so many things, but I think most of the main things, whatever the things you identify, it could be categorized under one of these key drivers. Okay, the threats as extinction and eco collapse, give me 1 minute. sorry. The threats as extinction and eco collapse, resource scarcity, nuclear arms race, climate change, global positioning, food system, failure, pandemic diseases, uncontrolled technologies, overpopulation, megacity collapses, and denial and delusions. That's also you can identify under traits. But most of these traits related to the, okay, here nuclear arms and other things, those are different things. Here, mainly the natural things we are talking. Climate change and air pollution has been cause of major concern across the world as it causing damage to the earth biodiversity. Now, everyone is talking about the climate change and air pollution. Those are the main topics we have to think about. Then invasive species can disrupt native species by introducing diseases, preying on native species and taking up space, food and other resources. That's also very much important. Now, maybe we may not give due consideration onto this kind of topics. Now, let's say, now when you go to a paddy field, you can see how much weedicides we have to use. Okay, or maybe the pesticides we have to use in different seasons. We will come across very new weeds, different weeds, maybe the different weeds in rivers and tanks. You can see. Okay, these are we call as the invasion of alien species. This not only the weeds or maybe different types of insects. Okay. Now, once we put some weedicide or pesticide, there will be a new formation, maybe the changes to their patterns or maybe the biodiversity issues. There will be a new thing formed in the, now it's like a COVID. Now now previously we didn't hear about the COVID. It was with animals, but suddenly it has passed to the people and it spread like a pandemic. Now, same way, these biodiversity issues due to, give me 1 minute, I just want to give respond to my GM. Okay. Okay, sorry. Then species overexploitation is the second biggest threat with the contribution 24% danger to the Earth's biodiversity. Now you can see species overexploitation, and then changes in land and sea use. That's also there. Then you can see there are different reports and other things. Okay. Now here the major traits are, you have to identify these are the 5 major traits, and changes in land and sea use, direct exploitation of natural resources. That means now when you use the natural resources, just think about the drinking water. That's also maybe the river water. You should not exploit these natural resources. Then other main thing is the climate change, then the pollution, invasion of alien species. Then treaty for non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. That's also a very important thing. Now, what do you mean by the nuclear non-proliferation of nuclear weapons? That means now this nuclear NPT is a landmark international treaty whose objective is to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology. To promote cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy to further the goal of achieving nuclear disarmament and general complete disarmament. Now here that's a treaty signed in 1960s. Now mainly these are the countries they use: India, Israel, Pakistan. The UN member states never accepted the NPT, 3 of which possesses under nuclear weapons. This India, Israel, and Pakistan, they didn't sign. And also there are some other countries in Africa also they didn't sign. Then that means there is a threat to the world. If they have some nuclear weapons, they may use at any time. Now here main concern about the India and Pakistan. Okay. Their main objective is to use the nuclear for the peaceful uses. Okay, now here the NPT is a multilateral treaty aimed at limiting the spread of nuclear weapons, including 3 elements. One is non-proliferation, disarmament, peaceful use of nuclear energy. The Global Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, that we called as the NPT, and other treaties against the spread of nuclear weapons entrust the IAEA. What do you mean by IAEA? International Atomic Energy Agency as the nuclear inspector. That means they work as the regulator. Today, IAEA safeguards nuclear materials and activities under agreements with more than 140 states. Okay. Now, what are the other uses of nuclear technology? Now, mainly the agricultural and food. Now, you can see there are, give me 1 second, okay? Oh, sir. You can see there are so many nuclear applications in agriculture and food sector, then medical sector. Now, I think without nuclear applications, you may not imagine any medical treatment. Most of these X-rays, maybe the MRI scans, CT scans, every place we use the nuclear technology. Okay. then use these chemotherapies and other things. That means the radiation aspects, mainly to kill the cancer tumors without damaging the healthy cells. We use the nuclear technology, and that's the most peaceful use of nuclear technology. And this IAEA's main function is to safeguard the peaceful use of the nuclear functions, and not only the other sectors, space exploration. Now nuclear technology makes deep space exploration possible. Why? Because you need more power. Now you need the continuous power to go far away around these spacecrafts and other things. We need this one. Then maybe the submarines we use, maybe okay, maybe you can say submarines for a war related things, but there are so many peaceful uses we use with these submarines. Then the water desalination, that's also very important. Most of the majority of the world people, they do not access for the clean water. Only option is the desalination. For desalination, we need huge energy consumption. Then nuclear facilities, they use for a, that means when a nuclear plant is running, you have to have a stable demand. Now to have the stable demand, they will inbuild these desalination plants, because if it's closer to the sea, that's true. And that will serve the drinking water for the majority of the world population. Then what are the human rights? That's also, we have to learn about this one. Now in our country also, everyone is talking Human Rights Council, everything. We are now, those are hot topics in Sri Lanka. I told a Human Rights Committee of the UN is located in Geneva. Now see, in 1946, Commission of Human Rights form. 1947, they draft the declarations. Then 1948, this UN General Assembly adopt the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that we called as the Human Declaration. Consists of 30 articles covering universal human rights, including freedom of opinion, expression, thought, and religion. Now here, I am not going into the detail of all 30, but are the main things. We'll go and try to understand something, okay? Now, what is the first? All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Now here, first one, they mention all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Equal in dignity and rights. Now you can compare whether these things are still valid in Sri Lanka or not. Or maybe you can compare other country, maybe the developed countries with the Sri Lankan context, or maybe the lesser developed countries, maybe the African countries concerns, and compare with the Sri Lanka. Okay. Then Article 2, everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms. Okay. No distinction shall be made on the basis of political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory. Okay. Now Article 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. Okay, that's why people are going against, now let's say during these protest campaigns and other things, once the police attack or whatever they obstruct, they are going to put a complaint against the police or maybe the other persons to the Human Rights Commission. Now, Human Rights Commission is under the governance of the UN Human Rights Council, and they have to follow this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Since Sri Lanka has signed this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, within our constitution itself, we have to comply with this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That means no need to explain everything in our constitution. Again, each article, once we sign, we have to bind with all these articles. Then Article 4, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Okay, maybe most of the African countries, they are still having this issue. But okay, now this slavery and this human trafficking, they are having the market demand, they are doing this one. Whatever the country, they sign these universal declarations, still these kind of activities are happening. No one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. That's why now I think in prisoners or maybe some person who commit a murder or whatever the things, in police stations or maybe the security, other security stations, whatever the place, maybe the Army, Navy, Air Force, they all have to comply with this Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Then Article 18, yeah, I have extracted whatever the most important things. That does not mean others are not important, but these are very clear things you can identify. Right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. That means in Article 18, it mentioned if someone wants to have the freedom of thought, he should have. Okay, maybe there are some restrictions and other things. It should not harm for the other person's right. Those things should be there. Then everyone can accept any religion. That religion also, you should not harm to others like that. Okay, that means whatever the things you do, maybe it's a human right to you, but you should not violate the human right of the other person. Okay, then Article 22, everyone as a member of the society has the right to social security and entitled to realization. Then Article 23, right to work, to free choice of employment. That means no one can, let's say at least your parents also can't force you to go, okay, do this, do this, do this. That will violate your own human right. Okay, maybe they will say, maybe to your kids, you will say, okay, do this subject, because you are having a care, you are caring them. But in theoretical way, you should not violate any human rights of a child or maybe adult or whoever thing. Then right to equal pay. That means whether if you are doing a work, whether you are female or male, that right to equal pay. Has the right to just and favorable remuneration. That's also very important thing. Right, the has the right to just and favorable remuneration. Now here I am still going, Article 23 has the right to form and join trade unions. That's also identified in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, but the trade union should be registered in a proper way under the Trade Union Act, under Labour Ministry in Sri Lanka or whatever the country. That's the way. everyone has the right to rest and leisure. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being. Okay, then I told I am not going to detail about all 30. Those are the main thing. Here you can, with that you can identify what are the basic human rights. Now, whatever the thing you have to live in free manner, that is a human right to you. Okay, but when now let's say if you think that's the way you should live, but that you should not violate any other's human right as well. Okay, that's the boundary you have to identify. Then what do you mean by hegemony? That's also a word I think you should understand. Hegemony is the dominance of one group over another, often supported by legitimate norms and ideas. The dominance of one social group or class in a society. This control can be exercised subtly rather than forcefully through cultural means and economic power, and rest on the mixture of the consents and quotient. They included China, France, USSR, UK, and US among the 5 nations. US were the leaders. Now here, hegemony means in a country, if some group is dominant. Now, I do not want to give any examples that will give us some ethnic issues or racial issues. But when you consider our society also, there are okay, maybe in some parts there are some race issues, maybe some religion issues, maybe some group having the dominance. That dominance group controls the norms and ideas of the people. Okay, but maybe previously we had the communism and capitalism. That's also we can consider indirectly as a hegemony. Okay, now Soviet Russia, maybe the Russian Federation countries, they had the communism, but they are independent state, but indirectly they supported for that kind of things. Now here, just think about this word. I'm in here also. I won't ask what do you mean by hegemony and other things. When you write your descriptive answers, you can use these words to give support your answers. Okay. I think with that we can. That's the final slide. I want to do it. Here, actually, I have not gone into the details. My main objectives were to cover most of these topics, and here you will get a common topic mainly related to the present world crisis, but not related to the economics like now in Sri Lankan economy and other things. Maybe it is related to some international relations related covering these aspects. Okay. Do you have any questions? If you want only, I think last year paper is the only paper I did it. I think previously this subject, I don't know whether this is in the section 2. Maybe ISL can put a question or not, but in section 2, I have done 2 modules. One is national policy and Sri Lankan economy and these international relations. But only one question you can write. Do not write the both questions because you may think you can get more marks, but do not write 2 questions. You have to write one question from each section. Okay, there are 4 sections. That means you have to write one question. That's a must. That means 4 questions from 4 sections. Okay. Any questions? Please go through these slides. That may be sufficient. And also just if you can just watch the TV and maybe go through some newspapers and other things, then you can easily write down this question. And also when you write down this question, you may get some information from the national this national economy issues also. Now let's say what kind of impact to the Sri Lankan economy through this Ukraine-Russia war. Then you can give some exam. Now let's say if you want to try this question, that means you may not write the energy policy and Sri Lankan economy question. Then you can support your answers from the content from the national economy as well. Okay, but just write down the related things. And other main thing is when you are writing one thing, do not elaborate a particular aspect for a, maybe some students I have come across, they wrote only 1 point for more than 1.5, 2 pages. Do not write like that. Do not write all the things in point form. Give some brief explanation, at least 2 to 3 lines for a specific point. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, shall we wind up? I have shared all my slides with the ISL. I think they will share with you. And please go through the slides. I will wish you all the best for the exam. I think this time also I may get so many that means responses from you. Maybe last time I marked more than, I think, nearly 400 question papers. Okay. It's up to you to decide whether to write my questions or other questions, but whoever questions you write, I will wish you all the best for upcoming exam on 26th. Okay. Then shall we wind up? Then have a good day and wish you all the best.